My name is Margaret Collins. I'm 63 years old, and if my driver hadn't taken a different route that rainy Thursday night, I wouldn't be here telling this story. What happened to me began months earlier, after my husband Robert passed away. We had been married for 40 years. He was a respected community college professor, and I worked as an administrative records specialist. We weren't wealthy, but we had built a comfortable life together in a modest neighborhood outside Seattle. Then cancer took him. The hospital bills drained most of our savings. The insurance money disappeared faster than I expected. Before long, I found myself living alone in the same house we'd shared for decades, struggling to keep up with taxes, utilities, and repairs. Retirement became impossible. At 63, while most of my friends were planning vacations, I was searching for work. Eventually, I found a position at a private document preservation company downtown. The facility stored legal records, insurance claims, court documents, and archived evidence for ongoing investigations. The work wasn't exciting, but it paid enough to survive. My shift ended at midnight. The problem was transportation. Several public transit routes had been reduced, and the last bus left long before my shift ended. Walking through deserted streets after midnight wasn't something I felt comfortable doing anymore. Reluctantly, I started using a rideshare app. That's how I met Marcus Reed. The first time Marcus picked me up, I noticed two things immediately. First, he looked exhausted. Second, he seemed unusually observant. Most drivers either talk too much or not at all. Marcus listened. His silver sedan was always spotless. He drove carefully. He never sped, never stared at his phone, never tried forcing conversation. During that first ride, he simply asked, "Long shift?" I smiled. "Every night feels long these days." He nodded as if he understood exactly what I meant. Over the next several weeks, Marcus became my regular driver. Same pickup location, same time, same route home. Little by little, our conversations grew longer. I learned that Marcus had once worked as a building maintenance supervisor before a workplace accident left him with chronic back pain. Driving nights became his way of paying bills while caring for his elderly father during the day. He never complained. Not once. One cold November evening, I brought an extra cup of tea with me. "What's this?" he asked. "Peppermint tea," I said. "Night shifts are hard." He laughed. "So are night drivers." After that, bringing him tea became our unofficial tradition. Some nights it was peppermint. Some nights chamomile. Sometimes ginger when the weather was bad. It wasn't a big gesture. It was simply human kindness between two lonely people trying to make it through difficult seasons of life. By December, those 15-minute rides had become the most normal part of my week. What I didn't know was that Marcus had started noticing things. Tiny things. The same black SUV parked near my street. A man standing at the corner pretending to check his phone. A vehicle that appeared outside my house on multiple nights. At first he dismissed it. Then he started paying attention. Meanwhile, strange things began happening around me. A gate I knew I'd locked was suddenly open. A notebook disappeared from my kitchen counter. Nothing valuable was taken. Nothing obvious. Just small things that felt wrong. I convinced myself I was imagining it. Grief can make you doubt your memory. Loneliness can make you question your instincts. But Marcus wasn't so sure. One evening, as we turned onto my street, he slowed down. "You ever notice that blue SUV?" he asked. I glanced across the road. It looked ordinary. No. His eyes stayed fixed on it. "I've seen it 3 times this week." I laughed nervously. "You're probably more observant than I am." He didn't laugh back. Instead, he said something that would later haunt me. Sometimes noticing small things is what keeps people alive. At the time, I thought he was being dramatic. I had no idea that somewhere in the city, someone already knew my schedule. Someone knew where I worked. Someone knew when I came home. And someone was waiting for the perfect opportunity. What neither Marcus nor I realized was that the danger had already moved much closer than either of us imagined. The next night, Marcus deliberately drove past my house before picking me up from work. What he saw parked outside would convince him that I was in far more danger than I knew. The next evening felt ordinary. That was the frightening part. Danger rarely announces itself. It hides inside routines, waiting for you to stop paying attention. I left work just before midnight and walked toward the curb where Marcus usually waited. Rain drizzled lightly across downtown Seattle, turning streetlights into blurry pools of gold. The city looked peaceful. Marcus didn't. The moment I climbed into the car, I noticed his expression. His hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than usual. His eyes kept checking the mirrors. "Everything okay?" I asked. For a moment he didn't answer. Then he forced a small smile. Probably. Not exactly comforting. As we pulled away from the building, I handed him a travel cup of ginger tea. Normally, he'd joke about becoming addicted to my tea. This time he simply thanked me. The silence stretched for several blocks. Finally he spoke. "Margaret, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Has anyone been bothering you lately?" The question caught me off guard. "No." "You sure?" I thought about it. "Not really." "Why?" Marcus exhaled slowly. "Because something feels off." I laughed nervously. "That's not very specific." "No," he agreed. "It isn't." For the next few minutes, neither of us spoke. Then I remembered something. Earlier that morning, I had found my side gate open again. The same gate I distinctly remembered locking the night before. I mentioned it casually. Marcus didn't react casually. His jaw tightened. "What else?" "What do you mean?" "Anything unusual? Missing items? Strange neighbors? Cars you've noticed?" I shrugged. "There was a notebook that disappeared last month." His eyes immediately moved to the rearview mirror. "What kind of notebook?" "Just notes. Grocery lists mostly." "Mostly?" I hesitated. "There were a few work reminders." His expression darkened. "What kind of work reminders?" "Nothing confidential. Just case numbers and filing references." The car suddenly felt colder. Neither of us said anything for several seconds. Finally Marcus spoke. "Margaret, I drove through your neighborhood before my shift tonight." I frowned. "Why?" His answer sent a chill through me. "Because I wanted to see if that blue SUV was there again." My stomach tightened. And it was. I stared at him. Maybe he was overreacting. Maybe I was. Yet something about his voice felt different tonight. Serious. Focused. Almost concerned. We turned onto my street. Immediately Marcus slowed down. The SUV was gone. But something else caught his attention. A man stood beneath a flickering street lamp near the corner. Baseball cap. Dark jacket. Hands in his pockets. At first glance he looked harmless. At second glance he looked familiar. Very familiar. Marcus lowered his voice. "That's the same guy." "What guy?" "The one I've seen standing here before." I looked again. The man wasn't doing anything suspicious. Just standing there. Yet a strange feeling settled in my stomach. As our headlights swept across him, he turned away. Not casually. Quickly. Like someone avoiding recognition. Marcus watched him until he disappeared behind a nearby building. "You know him?" he asked. "No." The answer came faster than I expected. Because I was certain. I had never seen that man before. At least, not knowingly. When we reached my house, Marcus didn't drive away immediately. Instead, he sat there watching. The porch light glowed. Everything appeared normal. Yet he remained parked. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Making sure you get inside." I smiled. "You're becoming overprotective." "No." His eyes stayed fixed on the house. "I'm becoming careful." For some reason that answer unsettled me. I unlocked my front door and stepped inside. Before closing it, I glanced back. Marcus was still there. Watching. Waiting. Only after I locked the door did he finally pull away. That night I barely slept. Not because of the man near the streetlight. Not because of the missing notebook. Not even because of the blue SUV. It was because I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been studying my routine. And the next morning, I discovered something that transformed my unease into genuine fear. My garage door was partially open. I was absolutely certain I had closed it. Even worse, a muddy footprint sat on the concrete floor inside. And it definitely wasn't mine. When I told Marcus about the footprint the following night, he revealed a secret he had been keeping for weeks. A secret involving one of his passengers, my street address, and a conversation that would change everything. The muddy footprint stayed on my mind all day. I tried convincing myself there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe a delivery worker had stepped into the garage weeks ago. Maybe I had accidentally left the door open. Maybe grief and stress were making me paranoid. But deep down I knew something wasn't right. By the time my shift ended the following night, I was exhausted. Marcus was waiting outside the records facility as usual. The moment I climbed into the car, he noticed something was wrong. "You look pale," he said. I closed the door and buckled my seatbelt. I found a footprint in my garage. The car remained silent. No surprise. No questions. Almost like he had been expecting that answer. His reaction scared me more than the footprint itself. "What?" I asked. Marcus stared through the windshield. Then he sighed heavily. I was hoping I was wrong. A knot formed in my stomach. Wrong about what? For several seconds he didn't answer. Traffic rolled past us as rain tapped softly against the windows. Finally, Marcus pulled away from the curb. As he drove, he spoke quietly. "There's something I haven't told you." Immediately, my pulse quickened. What kind of something? The kind I wasn't sure was important. I didn't like where this was going. "Marcus." He tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "About 2 months ago, I picked up a passenger from a downtown bar." I frowned. "What does that have to do with me?" At first, nothing. He glanced at me through the mirror. But then he started talking. Marcus explained that some passengers treated rideshares like private confession booths. People drank too much. They complained. They bragged. They revealed things they never should. This passenger was one of those people. A man in his late 50s. Expensive watch. Expensive clothes. Short temper. The kind of man who assumed nobody around him mattered. For several rides, Marcus had picked him up after midnight. And every time the man talked. Mostly business. Mostly complaints. First Marcus ignored it. Then certain details started repeating. A woman asking questions. Missing records. Internal audits. Someone becoming a problem. Someone who needed to be handled. I felt a chill spread through my chest. What woman? Marcus looked at me. That's the problem. He paused. Eventually, he started mentioning your street. My entire body went cold. What? He said it multiple times. I stared at him. No. Marcus nodded slowly. I wish I was kidding. The city lights blurred beyond the windows. For a moment, I couldn't process what I was hearing. Maybe it was another person. I thought so too. What was his name? Marcus hesitated, then answered. Richard Kane. The name hit me like a distant memory. I had seen it before. Not recently, but somewhere. Somewhere connected to work. My heartbeat accelerated. I know that name. Marcus immediately looked at me. You do? I think so. I searched my memory. Then it clicked. File. One of the audits. One of the settlement reviews. The name had appeared on several documents. Nothing major at the time. Just another name in a mountain of paperwork. But now it felt different. Dangerous. Marcus continued. The first time I got concerned was when he mentioned your neighborhood. I swallowed hard. And the second time? His eyes met mine in the mirror. The second time he said your full address. The world seemed to stop. Every sound vanished. Every passing car disappeared. Only those words remained. Your full address. My hand started trembling. How? I don't know. That's impossible. I thought so too. Marcus reached into the center console and pulled out his phone. He unlocked it, opened a notes application, then handed it to me. Dozens of entries filled the screen. Dates, times, fragments of conversations, observations, names, everything carefully documented. One entry caught my eye. She works late. Another. House empty after midnight. Another. Need to know what she found. My breathing became shallow. This is about me. Marcus nodded. I think it is. For weeks, he'd been quietly collecting information. Not because he was investigating anyone, because something about those conversations felt wrong. And now the footprint, the missing notebook, the blue SUV, the man under the streetlight. Suddenly none of it felt random anymore. I looked out the window. Rain continued falling. The city seemed darker than before. More dangerous. Then Marcus said something that made my blood run cold. Margaret. What? He hesitated. There's one thing I haven't told you yet. I stared at him. What? His voice dropped to almost a whisper. Before picking you up tonight, I drove past your house. My stomach sank. And Marcus took a slow breath, then delivered the sentence that changed everything. I saw someone trying your front door. Marcus hadn't just seen a stranger near my house. He had watched the man walk to my front porch, test the doorknob and peer through my windows. What happened next forced us to make a decision that could either save my life or put us both directly in danger. For several seconds I couldn't speak. The words echoed inside my head. I saw someone trying your front door. My throat felt dry. What do you mean? I finally whispered. Marcus kept his eyes on the road. I mean exactly what I said. The rain intensified outside, drumming against the windshield. Every nerve in my body felt awake. Who was it? I couldn't see his face clearly. My heart pounded. Was it the same man from the streetlight? I think so. Think so. Not know. Think. That uncertainty somehow made it worse. Marcus took a deep breath before continuing. When I drove through your neighborhood, I noticed a car parked across the street from your house. Immediately, I thought of the blue SUV. The SUV? No. His answer surprised me. This was a dark gray sedan. My stomach tightened. Another vehicle. Another stranger. Another thing I hadn't noticed. Marcus continued. The engine was still warm. What does that mean? It means someone had arrived recently. I stared at him. You checked. He nodded. I used to work maintenance. Old habits. The silence returned. Then Marcus spoke again. I parked down the block. Why? Because something felt wrong. A chill ran down my spine. He described what happened next. The neighborhood was quiet. Most homes were dark. Rain had just started falling. Marcus sat in his car for several minutes. First, nothing happened. Then a man exited the gray sedan. Middle-aged. Dark jacket. Baseball cap. The same description as the man under the streetlight. Marcus watched him cross the road. Watched him approach my gate. Watched him pause. Then open it. My pulse raced. He went inside? Marcus nodded. Yes. I felt sick. The gate. The garage. The missing notebook. Suddenly everything connected. What happened after that? Marcus glanced at me through the mirror. He walked to your porch. I could barely breathe. He knocked. No. My stomach dropped. He tried the doorknob. The car suddenly felt too small. Too warm. Too real. He what? He checked whether your door was locked. Every hair on my arm stood up. For months I'd been telling myself I was imagining things. Now there was no denying it. Someone had been watching me. Someone knew my schedule. Someone knew when I wasn't home. Marcus continued. He looked through the front window. My hand started shaking. How long? Maybe 30 seconds. 30 seconds. Long enough to confirm nobody was inside. Long enough to study the house. Long enough to make plans. What happened next? He walked around the side of the house. The blood drained from my face. The garage. Marcus nodded. I think so. For a moment I couldn't process anything. The reality was overwhelming. If Marcus hadn't driven by, if I hadn't spoken to him, if I had gone straight home that night, what would have happened? The thought made me nauseous. We need to call the police. Marcus didn't answer immediately. Finally he said, We will. Will. Not now. A new fear surfaced. Why aren't we calling them right now? Because Marcus had noticed something else. Something far worse. I followed him. I stared at him. You what? His expression remained calm. He left after a few minutes. Marcus, that's dangerous. I know. Then why would you do that? His answer was simple. Because I needed to know if he was random. I already knew the answer. He wasn't. Marcus sighed heavily. I followed the sedan for about 10 minutes. The rain blurred across the glass. My pulse hammered in my ears. And Marcus swallowed. He didn't go home. A knot formed in my stomach. Where did he go? Marcus slowed the vehicle, then pulled into an almost empty office parking lot. Streetlights flickered overhead. The engine shut off. The silence was terrifying. Marcus turned toward me. His face looked more serious than I had ever seen. Margaret. What? The man drove to your workplace. My heart stopped. The records facility. The archive building. The audits. The missing documents. Everything suddenly snapped together. He wasn't just watching my house. No. Marcus looked directly at me. I think he's watching you. Fear settled into my chest like ice. Because for the first time this no longer felt like stalking. It felt like something much bigger. Something connected to the files I'd been reviewing. Something connected to the missing records. And then Marcus revealed the final detail. The detail that convinced us we couldn't wait until morning. As the man entered the archive building, he didn't force the door open. He used a key. The moment Marcus told me the stranger had access to my workplace, everything changed. Within hours, we would be sitting inside a police station, uncovering a fraud scheme worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and discovering that I had unknowingly become the next target. The moment Marcus told me the stranger had entered my workplace using a key, I knew this was no longer a coincidence. Someone wasn't just watching me. Someone was connected to the archive. Someone had access. And someone believed I knew something dangerous. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Rain tapped softly against the roof of the car. My heart felt like it was trying to break through my chest. What do we do now? I asked. Marcus started the engine. We go to the police. This time I didn't argue. The police station was nearly empty when we arrived. It was after 1 in the morning. The kind of hour when exhausted officers survive on coffee and instinct. An officer escorted us into a small interview room. First I felt ridiculous. A missing notebook. An open gate. A footprint. A suspicious man. Individually, none of it sounded serious. But when everything was placed together, the picture became impossible to ignore. I explained my job. The audit. The altered records. The missing documents. The strange activity around my house. Then Marcus handed over his evidence. His notes. Dates. License plate numbers. Descriptions. Recorded observations. Everything. The detective reviewing the information became increasingly serious. Then Marcus mentioned the man's name. Richard Kane. The detective immediately looked up. That reaction alone terrified me. You know him? Marcus asked. The detective exchanged a glance with another officer, then nodded. Unfortunately, yes. My stomach dropped. Richard Kane wasn't just some random stalker. He worked contract security. One of the facilities he occasionally covered was my archive building. The room suddenly felt colder. He has access? I asked. The detective nodded. Limited access. Enough to move around without attracting attention. Everything made sense. The altered records. The missing files. The The unexplained discrepancies. The access logs that never showed forced entry. Nobody had broken in, because the person responsible already belonged there. The investigation moved quickly, much faster than I expected. By dawn, detectives had obtained emergency warrants. By afternoon, search teams were executing them. Meanwhile, I sat inside a secure hotel room arranged by the police. For the first time in months, I wasn't alone. Yet I'd never felt more shaken. My quiet routine had become part of a criminal investigation. Hours later, the detective returned. His expression told me everything before he spoke. They found evidence. A lot of it. Boxes of altered legal documents. Fraudulent settlement records. Financial transfers linked to shell companies. Thousands of pages connected to years of theft. Money intended for injured workers. Elderly clients. Families fighting legal battles. People who could least afford to lose it. The total amount exceeded several $100,000. I sat speechless. What had started as a few suspicious file discrepancies had uncovered an entire operation. But then the detective revealed something even more disturbing. They had found photographs. Dozens of them. Photographs of my house. My garage. My front gate. My porch. Even pictures of me leaving work. My blood ran cold. He hadn't been watching me for days. He'd been watching me for months. The following weeks passed in a blur. Federal investigators became involved. The archive temporarily closed. Multiple arrests followed. Several employees were questioned. And eventually the entire scheme collapsed. When the trial began, the evidence was overwhelming. Marcus's observations became a critical timeline. His attention to detail connected pieces investigators might never have discovered. The recordings. The notes. The dates. The patterns. Everything mattered. Richard Kane was found guilty on multiple charges, including fraud, evidence tampering, conspiracy, and stalking. The sentence was severe. The threat was finally gone. Yet the most important thing I gained wasn't justice. It was perspective. Months later, life slowly returned to normal. The archive reopened under new management. Security measures were strengthened. Procedures were changed. And for the first time in years, I felt safe walking through my front door. Marcus still drove nights. I still worked late shifts. And every Friday I still brought him tea. Some traditions are worth keeping. But our friendship changed too. It became something deeper. Not romance. Not obligation. Something rare. Trust. The kind built when two strangers choose to care about each other. One evening while driving me home, Marcus smiled and said something I'll never forget. You know, most people would have ignored those signs. I looked out the window. The city lights blurred past. Most people would have ignored the driver too. He laughed. And for the first time in a very long time, so did I. Looking back now, I understand something important. My life wasn't saved by luck. It wasn't saved by courage. It was saved by attention. A simple cup of tea started a friendship. A friendship created trust. Trust created awareness. And awareness created action. Sometimes danger doesn't arrive with sirens and warnings. Sometimes it hides inside routine. Inside schedules. Inside ordinary days that seem exactly like yesterday. And sometimes the person who changes your life isn't a hero. They're simply someone who notices. Someone who listens. Someone who chooses not to look away. And if Marcus hadn't taken a different route that rainy night, if he hadn't paid attention, if he had ignored his instincts, there would be no story left for me to tell. Have you ever ignored a warning sign and later realized it was important? Let me know in the comments. And remember, kindness may seem small, but sometimes a simple act of human connection can change the course of a life forever.